Hi, I think we are live.
Good morning.
I always
Yeah.
have to
Or
search all over
good
my
day.
screen.
I need to say good day is what I need to say. Yeah. Wherever you are, good day. Yeah.
I
Hello.
always feel so dumb when I start my lives because then I have to search in multiple parts of the screen versus just looking at the camera, right? For
Yeah.
am I live? Is it all good?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Handling your own tech.
Right.
So let's do a little welcome and introductions. You want to start?
Hi, I'm glad you're here. I'm Diana Larsen and co-author of the book Lead Without Blame with my partner over there. Yeah. And depending on how I'm showing up on your screen. And I've a longtime person in the Agile community, longtime interest in things having to do with leadership, teams, and the importance of learning.
And my name is Tricia Broderick, also co-author of Lead Without Blame. And I'm a leadership advisor that feels really lucky. I got involved in the Agile community very early on, but kind of engaged in this whole topic and leadership just from a place of it wasn't always easy to be the leader I wanted to be. And so kind of trying to help and pay that forward as with so many people, Diana included, helping me along my journey and stuff. So
Nice.
that's what we're going to be doing. We wrote our book, but we missed each other. So we decided what better way to continue to pay it forward and help is to come together to do a little live each month on kind of a themed topic. And I'm proud of myself this month. I got it correct. It does say July.
Yes.
Last month was a little faux pas on my part. And so, of course, when people think of July, we think of independence. And so that's going to be our topic for today. These are not scripted. We have no idea what we're going to say or what's going to happen as we go along with this conversation. But just to explore the topic of independence in the workplace a little bit. So
yeah.
When I say the word independence, and especially in the workplace, what does that mean for you? Like what comes up for you for that?
Well, I've been thinking about this for a few days because we just had U.S. Independence Day, right? A big public holiday. Actually, and I'm studying French, and French independence is coming up on the 14th. And so I was thinking ahead about this and thinking about, the Agile world, leadership world, work world, independence. Well, so I thought about autonomy and the importance of autonomous teams. And we actually talk a bit about that in the book. But the other thing that came up for me, and this may be kind of a wild card, was, we think about independence and the opposite being dependence. But in my world, the thing I focus on more than independence is interdependence.
Oh, say more. I like it.
And that tension between autonomy, either personal or team autonomy, and the interdependence that we need at work to accomplish a lot of things. And so I was thinking a lot about that tension between those two.
Yeah, I like that. I always struggle because there is this big focus of autonomy, right? When we define autonomy of just kind of like whether it's perceived or real, it's a feeling and an ownership of getting to make your own choices, right? Whether those choices are individual or as a team depends on what kind of autonomy is being offered. Yeah. But I always struggle a little bit in the Agile space because it is so team focused. It is these things that I watch a lot of people kind of lose themselves a little bit in that. And so I really like this dynamic of interdependence in terms of, yes, you are still an individual because that's what we value, right? We value your diversity, we value your experience and things, but you also have a dynamic of working with other people. But how are you choosing to show up? So when I think of independence, I almost think of it as like, how am I choosing to show up? And what am I making choices for myself in that interdependence. So I really kind of like that. I think of it as a little bit of like, at the end of the day, I'm still making choices for me. I may make them on behalf for the team or the organization or a customer, or sometimes for myself in a hopefully non-manipulative kind of way. but it is I own that.
Yeah.
Right. And when that comes into play in a workplace, when I feel an independence in the workplace of getting to show up how I want to show up, choose how I show up, hopefully with the goal of that interdependence, right? And I'm not choosing to show up to be like, no, I don't want to work with you today, right?
Right.
But it's still a choice that I'm making, because we talk a lot about responsibility in the book, in terms of like, I'm choosing how I want to show up. That's going to give me more responsibility and accountability in that, than to just go, I don't have a choice, and then I'm stuck in obligation.
Right. Well, and it also reminds me, it makes me think about a little bit we talk a lot about psychological safety. We talk about it in the book. People talk about it everywhere. We're mentioning it in the new Agile Retrospective, 2nd edition, that'll be out later. That whole question of psychological safety and the independence part of that is, each person on this psychologically safe team needs to be able to have their own boundaries, right? Which is an independence thing. My boundaries may be different than your boundaries, but we have to negotiate that, because we both get that piece of the personal autonomy, integrity, authenticity, background, think we all have baggage that we're still carrying with us that, that affects some of the ways that we respond, and what are our boundaries around that, and how do we negotiate that and stay psychologically safe in a team. So that's a little different take on independence, but I think it's an important piece of our independence. Understanding it's not just independence in opposition to being dependent on anything. It is that integrity, that personal core center that we all need to work from.
Well, I like that. The core center of like being able to then show up in your most creative self, your most innovative self, your most things. And it's basically giving yourself that right to go, this is what I need in this team, doing in this team. Now, if there's conflicts to it in an unhealthy way, or what I need is for you to never speak to me, that's not a good boundary for that, where you are then taking your independence and honestly weaponizing it, in my world, weaponizing towards teamwork, right? And if that is really a boundary you need, then maybe team environments are probably not the best for you. And so I think there's almost a part of owning what that independence you need is, so that you can then have that interdependencies with other people in healthy ways.
Yeah. I like what Ryland's saying in the comments about the only thing you control in any room is your own behavior, right? And that how each of us behaves in our own integrity, in our own space, from our own core set of values and beliefs and background and all that, it may influence other people in the room, but there's no guarantee of that. We have to be okay in that kind of independence of being who we are, our authentic self.
Because if we're not, then we're more prone a little bit to that group think, right? We're more prone to accommodations instead of really collaborations. We're more prone to avoidance, right? To those things. So in some ways, it's almost like owning my independence to best show up.
Right.
In a team environment, right? In a way that I'm role modeling what I do want, right? In those things, but you can't.
Right.
So let me ask this question then. It's making me think of this, right? So if we're, because I don't believe that there's ever such a thing as too much teamwork, right?
Yeah.
Like I just don't. I think
Over team, right?
like I can't. There's just no like. Now,
Yeah.
can I be exhausted? Yes, all that stuff. But is there too much? What happens if there's too much independence? Like, what if what we're describing right here is like kind of that self-confidence, that self-ownership, that how
Well,
I
it can't, you can't let it tip over into my way or the highway.
Mm.
I mean, you have to be able to have that independence and the flexibility to know, when you're going to go with the will of the group. I was just thinking about the difference between consensus and consent out of sociocracy,
Ooh,
right?
okay.
And you can't really consent to a decision if you don't know who you are, if you don't know who's showing up, right? If you don't, I can work toward consensus for the whole group, but I personally can't consent and say, yes, I'm okay with us going this direction unless I really have a good sense of myself.
Well, I think that plays off what Ryland's talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like, if
Yeah.
there's a lack of independence, like
Yeah.
I think in some ways, I guess the way that we've been kind of defining this or explaining and highlighting it is if I think about times when I've had a lack of independence, right? Like I've had a lack of, I almost didn't want autonomy to be given to me, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't want
Yeah.
to be responsible. I didn't want those choices. I didn't want that that weight, right? So I think the problem that comes with a lack of independence is a lack of confidence, a lack of willingness to challenge yourself, right? And ultimately impacting kind of the team, the customer, the result that you're trying to do. And so for me, I think I try to show up with a lot of compassion when there's a lack of independence, because there's usually kind of back to that psychological safety. There's usually other things going on that's making it hard for that person to maybe communicate it, advocate, understand even what they need. Like I think now in hindsight, there are just times I didn't know what my boundaries were. I didn't know what I needed, right? To be my best self in the workplace.
Right. And that's why that's that's why, even though we're talking about three things, dependence, independence, and interdependence, that it's really only independence and dependence that are kind of opposites, right?
Right.
And when we don't have our good sense of self and independence and so on, it can be very seductive to fall back into that dependent, well, I'll do whatever the group wants all the time. I'm not going to put my ideas. There can be a lot of reasons why people might do this, but it can also be kind of a comfort thing. Well, I'm not going to be lead without blame, right? I'm not going to be I'm not going to have been responsible for any of these because I didn't step forward and advocate for this or that or the other thing, right? I just went along. And that kind of passive dependency, or even active dependency, which we also call codependency, is so dangerous when we're trying to work together and get things done. We really need to know people. We need people to be independent because we need to know what everybody thinks before we can come up with the best decision for the whole. Right?
Yeah. You have a comment in here that they want to hear your thoughts on.
Oh, what's that?
What if we bring home these unhealthy behaviors? The family unit would crumble. How is it then that we continue these behaviors that are unacceptable at home? Would love your thoughts, Diana.
Yeah. Well, that is really interesting because I have seen that, but I've seen it kind of from the opposite view, that when I've worked with folks and they have created, maybe designed their own work and created some really good teamwork, and they've really figured out that that's the way they're going to get things done. And they start learning the skills about giving each other peer-to-peer feedback, and they start learning, and they take it home. And then the stories that I hear about that are just marvelous, you know. Or, I mean, it's kind of like the stories about, you know, taking home a scrum board to help your kids do their homework. You know, it's like,
that did not work for me, by the way.
yeah, it doesn't work for everybody. That's for sure. But those kinds of stories where, you know, the really good kind of healthy interactions that we start doing at work often get transferred to home. On the other hand, as Bakhtiar, I hope, is saying here, there is, I think it actually is a transfer the other way. People who have unhealthy behaviors at home tend to bring those to work. And that's when, you know, coaching, or, I mean, individual coaching, or even team coaching where you pull somebody aside from time to time, or those kinds of things really have to kick into gear, because we can't allow the kind of toxic behaviors that might seem permissible at home to transfer into the workplace when we're working in groups.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I think that's part of what people take the autonomy and what we're highlighting, independence on a personal self, right? Like autonomy is being given an opportunity to make those choices. Like I'm giving you permission to make those decisions, right? I am giving you autonomy for that.
Yeah.
Whether or not you choose to do it is kind of where your independence level is, right?
Yeah.
Of do I have the confidence? Do I have the ability? Do I feel the agency? I like Rylan kind of pointing out the authority to do it, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like saying, just because you're telling somebody to make a choice doesn't mean that they will, or they fully, and that goes back to what you were like, the consent dynamic of their decision. And I think that's one of the hard times that people have is we keep trying to give out autonomy to people. And then when they don't make the decisions, we then go, see, you need me, and I got to jump in and do it, because we're not really focused in on building the people up,
right,
in terms of their independence, and going, hey, I have a voice, I have a perspective, I have a value that I'm bringing, that's why I'm making this choice, why I'm choosing to make this decision, and why I want this autonomy.
Yeah, it really is something to watch for on a lot of teams. I know I've worked with several teams where pretty much everyone on the team was a non-native speaker, and all came from a culture that discouraged putting yourself forward or having your own ideas or whatever. And you know, that doesn't really work super well with business teamwork. And so knowing that we can't just say, oh, you're empowered, and then abdicate, you know, or, oh, now you're an autonomous team, I'm outie, right? And sink or swim on your own. But when we know that we're dealing with either individuals or whole groups of people who need some additional support in understanding what the difference is in those in more independent behaviors, and having your own, you know, please sharing your own thoughts. And we really need to hear what you're thinking. We need to hear your perspective.
You need that encouragement, right?
Yeah. And it's not, you know, you're not gonna, there's not gonna, for me anyway, there's not gonna be any negative impact for this. I really want it and need it, and then make sure that however it gets followed through on isn't something that people feel like they've been, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have been my real self here. That appreciation for people being their true, authentic, full of integrity selves has to continually be there and be reinforced. And in some ways, that's an aspect, I think, of psychological safety that we don't focus on as much. But I think it's really important. I do think it's super important.
We're at time already.
Oh no, really?
No.
We're just getting going.
I know. I feel like there's a whole nother chapter right here. It's like I'm digging into this right now. Do you have where are you going to be coming up?
Well, I'm going to be at Agile 2023. I am going to be at Agile Australia in August. And I already have a few things for the fall. I'm going to be at Scrum Day with Wisconsin in September. And that may be far enough. There was something else. Oh, and I have just connected up with the folks who do what has been called the Business Agility Lab and is now going to be called the Strategic Agility Lab, to make sure it doesn't get confused with other things. And we're going to be putting on a workshop in October that I'm really looking forward to. Yeah.
Nice. What do I have coming up? I also will be doing Agile 2023 together as a workshop and stuff. So definitely hit us up while we're there.
Yeah.
We'll be bringing pens to sign if anybody gets our book at the bookstore and stuff.
And stickers. We have stickers. We have all kinds of wonderful stickers we're bringing.
I mean, who doesn't love a sticker? I mean, come on. I will be at the Des Moines Agile Conference in September as the keynote. I will also be keynoting TechWells in November as well. And so those are the ones that I have. I do have a couple public trainings coming up. I don't do many of them, but I took July. It's all about vacation and the Agile Conference in July. But in September, I have a Leading Amazing Teams course with Jake Calabrese, an impactful training and speaking. And then in October, I have my next facilitation focused course for ACSM.
Right.
So things starting to come back up, things happening again.
It's amazing to be talking about November already. I sort of stopped myself from talking about November, but I'll be at Oradev in Sweden in November. So lots of
we're in the second half of the year now. It's crazy. Yeah. We're in the second half of the year now. It's a little insane. And then our next live, we're going to do our August edition on the 4th. We're not trying to make it the first Friday of the month. It's just when our schedules can align. So we do it when we can. Although maybe we'll do an impromptu live while we're at Agile 2023.
Oh, we could.
Because we'll be sitting next to each other. We'd have to see about the sound, but I'm sure there's tons of people like Pryor and things like that would have. Oh, I said Pryor as if that's David Pryor would have speakers and things for us maybe. But maybe we could try that.
Yeah. There's a number of folks there who do podcasts at the conference that might help us out.
We could just hijack their tech.
Yeah.
But if you're at any one of these events, please do come and say hi. And if you have questions or have a topic that you would like us to just chat and riff off, let us know. Otherwise, we will see you in August.
And what is the topic for August? We're going to expect you to give a little experience report, Tricia, because the topic is vacations.
Oh, see, it was already out. Like I'm already heading to.
You're already heading there. Yeah.
Perfect. Till next time.
Bye.